during this session. We'll send them all out tomorrow. And one last thing, if anyone has any ideas, if there's anything you'd like us to particularly focus on during one of these Zoom sessions, by all means, just send the topic along to me and I will do what I can to have that for you, okay? Before we move on, I'd like to acknowledge these lands that we live on. We respectfully acknowledge the land on which we gather as the ancestral homes of the Beothuk, whose culture has now been erased forever. We also acknowledge the island of Ukturunguk as the unceded traditional territory of the Beothuk and Mi'kmaq. And we acknowledge Labrador as the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Innu of Nitassinan, the Inuit of Nunatsiavut, and the Inuit of Nunatukavut. We recognize all First Peoples who were here before us, those who live with us now, and the 7 generations to come. As First Peoples have done since time immemorial, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to establish the cultures, ceremonies, and traditions of all who call it home. As we open our hearts and minds to the past, we commit ourselves to working in the spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all. Financial abuse of seniors is not a new topic for some of you, but the more we talk about it, the more awareness that we build around it. So we keep trying to start those conversations about abuse and financial abuse. The more we talk about it, the greater the possibility of reducing its occurrence, okay? June 15th, a week from today, is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And I'm hopeful that you will remember that date. And next week, on the day, on June 15th, talk with even one person about elder abuse and what you hear during today's session. Just one person, that's all. And hopefully that person will talk to someone he or she knows. I think we all need to work together to build more awareness about this issue. We invited your responses to 3 questions during the registration process, and I'd like to take a moment just to share those responses with you. Of the 57 responses we received to the first question, which was, have you or anyone you know been financially abused? 28 of you said yes, you did know someone, or you had been abused yourself, or you knew someone. 17 said no, and 12 said they weren't sure. And being unsure is not unusual because oftentimes financial abuse can be done in such a way that we give it the benefit of the doubt. Was it intentional or was it accidental? 28 responses out of 57, almost 50% of the folks who registered for today's session know someone who has been financially abused. So one really has to wonder, is that only the tip of the iceberg? I mean, that's a lot of people out of the small group, okay? And of the 59 responses to the second question, who are most likely to financially abuse seniors? 2 people said caregivers, 6 people said strangers, and 51 of the people who registered said family members. The 51 who said family members are correct. Most financial abuse is perpetrated by family members. But what a sad way for seniors to think of those that we perceive as our loved ones. I'm pleased now to present today's guest speaker. And that's Mr. Leo Bonnell, whose bio is so long I didn't have room on the screen for all of it. Anyway, Leo's a retired bank manager and an advocate for older adults. During his banking career of 42 years, he became actively involved in community affairs in the many areas of the province where he and his family have lived during his banking retirement. Leo has been an active volunteer over the last 17 years in various capacities at the provincial, national, and community levels, including past chairperson and current member of the Provincial Advisory Council on Aging and Seniors, peer support volunteer with SeniorsNL. He's vice chair of the Random Age-Friendly Communities Board. At the national level, he is an advisory member on age-friendly communities for the Aging and Seniors Division of the Public Health Agency of Canada. And he also sits on the provincial government's Age-Friendly Communities Oversight Committee to help guide the development of the program framework. Over the years, he has served as Vice Chair of Rural Secretariat for the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador, past presidents of the Rotary Club International, the Lions Club, Chamber of Commerce, Victorian Order of Nurses, church boards, and other organizations throughout the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. In 2017, Rotary International bestowed on him a Paul Harris Scholarship Award in recognition for his work in advocating for the well-being of the aging population. In March 2019, the National Seniors Council of Canada invited Leo to an expert roundtable in Winnipeg to bring his perspective and advice on measures to address financial crimes and other harms against seniors. Two of Mr. Bonnell's present focuses are the age-friendly communities concept and creating awareness and education around elder abuse.
Video's gone. Oh, you lost.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you're okay now, Mary. Yeah.
I'm not touching my screen, so I don't know how this weird stuff is happening.
That's a glitch.
Anyway, Leo resides in Clarenville with his wife, Marion. So I think, without further ado, here I go again. I'm going to bring up Leo's slides now.
Well, thank you, Mary. Can you hear me?
Yes, one second.
Audio's
good. Slides.
Okay, that's good. Well, while you're doing that, I just want to welcome everybody this morning. First of all, I really would want to say thank you very much to SeniorsNL for hosting this webinar and inviting me to be to present on this very important topic. You know, creating awareness and education on elder abuse has been one of my key focuses. And when I'm invited to speak at seniors groups or conventions or community organizations and even high schools, this is really what I'm excited to talk about. You know, engaging people in conversations at forums, webinars, and even at the kitchen tables on crimes that support other types of messaging is really a great start. You know, this webinar is just another great opportunity for me to talk about elder abuse and to bringing messages to the high school students as part of their human dynamic studies is another a part of getting the word out. As Mary indicated earlier, June 15th is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, as designated by the United Nations, as a matter of fact. But in my view, every single day can be an awareness day. As I said earlier, I certainly welcome all of everybody this morning joining us from right across the province, and I understand there might even be people from other parts of Canada. You know, every single one of us, as Mary has said, can do our part in combating elder abuse. And while there are 9 forms of elder abuse, the focus this morning is going to be on financial, which happens to be considered the most common, and the one abuse that leads to other forms of abuse, like physical abuse. So again, it's my pleasure to be here this morning to kind of bring some conversation around this very important topic. So Mary, if we can start with the first slide, and of course I've entitled my PowerPoint presentation Shining a Light on the Financial Exploitation of Older Adults. And really that's what we need to do every single day is shine a light really to bring it to the forefront. So let's kind of start by defining financial abuse. What really is, what is it? It's actions taken or activities that harm an older person to jeopardize or weaken the person's financial well-being. It's a pretty straightforward statement, pretty easy to understand. So let's move to the next slide, Mary. The question becomes, how many older adults are affected? Well, Canadian research that was done a few years ago indicates that between 4 and 10% of older adults have experienced one or more of the many forms of financial abuse at some point in time in their latter years. It is often hidden. And I go back to, how many. I would suspect that that's probably even a little bit higher now during COVID times. This research is a couple of years old. It's often hidden and underreported. As a matter of fact, I think the studies indicate that only 1 in 5 cases comes to the attention of the authorities. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through the presentation. Frauds and scams are on the increase. Everybody knows that. Scammers are becoming more innovative in their ways of attacking older adults. I mean, they have new approaches and they got new tactics to really get to older people. Next slide, Mary. Who are the victims? Well, as most of you may know, they are older adults who are mostly unfamiliar with financial matters. They're vulnerable adults, cognitive impairments. They're older adults who are isolated, living alone, lonely, no family, or family have moved. And I know in Newfoundland, this is very prevalent, where you'll find in a lot of smaller communities, family members have moved away for employment purposes. They've moved to Alberta. And in many, many cases, there are seniors that are living with no family, nobody to have a look in on them, Other victims are older adults with a life-changing event. Maybe their spouse has just died. Maybe they've just received a diagnosis of some serious illness. Anything that's really has changed their life, where they're really not focusing too much on the day-to-day things. Now, who are the victims? Again, as studies have shown, that are more women than men. It's almost like a 2 to 1. Although I read some recent studies that show that also it's men that's been the victims, and I think there's been broken down with they've been unmarried, widowed, or divorced, or maybe never ever married, lacking in social confidence. They might have limited social interaction, and they might certainly be in poor health. So these are kind of an overview of as to who the victims are in being at the hands of perpetrators of financial abuse. So next slide, Mary. Who are the perpetrators? Well, as Mary indicated, you can in her opening comments, it's family mostly. Studies have found that perpetrators were adult children, grandchildren, 42%. Then you got other family members, 31%. So that makes up like just about 75, or just about 3/4 of all of the abuse is perpetrated by family members. Other perpetrators are trusted friends, caretakers, strangers, 27%. Caretakers certainly fall in that category. And I'm going to talk a little bit further about that in some slides that will come up later. And of course, the next one, scammers, telemarketers, door-to-door salesmen, sales pitches, charities that use outside telemarketers to fundraise, high pressure tactics they use, because A lot of charities use outside telemarketers, and of course they get paid on how much money they raise. So they fall in that category. And you also have service providers who fail to disclose the full contract details. You have some examples would be security systems, and you heard so much on television over the last few months about telephone systems where people really don't understand the contracts when they get signed into them as to really what can happen. You know, I know of a story that came to my attention a year ago where some door-to-door salesman was selling security systems. He happened to come up on a door. It's a widow, it's a woman who just lost her husband, and she was living in, by the way, a very small community, and the high pressure started to be put on her where you're living in alone now. There's a potential for robberies and whatever. And anyhow, he had her sign up for a contract with pre-authorized debits coming out of her bank account. The next month, the system showed up. It never ever got installed, and she started talking to family, and they realized that that she really didn't need that, and she called the security company and said, "Too bad, you've got a contract for 3 years, and we're not going to cancel it." And so these are the kinds of things that happen. She was caught at her weakest moment, whereby the salesperson was talking about all the robberies going on, but she's a little tiny community, probably where there's no crime at all. Next slide. Some examples, and I can tell you during my banking experience that lasted over 42 years, I've seen so much of this abuse. I could sit here for hours to tell you stories of things that really happen. But anyhow, just defining it a little bit, really what it means is taking money, goods, or property using a variety of pressure tactics or threats through deception, scare tactics, or undue influence, arranging to have a senior change or alter a will, add a name to a bank account to make it joint, forging signatures on pension checks, misuse of joint bank accounts, using e-transfers to move money around. This is a very popular method now in these recent years, is to move money around through e-transfers. And there's so many stories that I could share with you on things that happened from e-transfers. Using an older person's bank cards, be it a credit card, be it a debit card, without their consent. I do have a little story to tell you, and they're one of many, but here's a story about adding a name to a bank account. An elderly man, he had been widowed for maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. One day, his granddaughter came to him and said, "Pop, you have nobody's name on your bank account, and if you should die, the bank's going to take your money." Well, this man was really not very sophisticated in financial matters. He really didn't know. And he said, "Well, what should I do?" She said, "You should add my name to your bank account, and then if anything happened to you, I can take care of matters." Well, he thought that was a pretty good idea. It's his granddaughter. It's, not much, no harm can come from that. So a few days later, they go down to the bank. They get, I'll call the person's name Jenny. Jenny's name added to the bank account. And that's fine. They leave the bank. Now the bank account is joint. And as most of you know, a joint account is a joint account. Anybody can have access to it. And that was fine until maybe about a few months later, when the elderly gentleman goes to the bank to add a few more dollars to his bank account from his pension check, only to find that he had less than $2 in his bank account. And I think what he had in the bank account was something like $13,000 or $14,000. It was his burial money that he had saved up. He really never had a major job all throughout his life, but he did manage to raise his children and put a few dollars aside for his burial, which is very, very important to older people. Oh, the poor man was devastated, but what he didn't know about his granddaughter is that she had a drug problem and she had taken the grandfather's money to feed her drug habit. That's just one example. There are many, many more that I can share with you. Next slide. Arranging for an older person to sign a power of attorney, land deeds, or other documents, or misusing a power of attorney. Now, a power of attorney is very, very important. It's a great legal document that really allows a person to have the authority to act for the other person in the event that it needs to be. It's a great legal document. However, on many, many occasions, these documents, these power of attorneys gets misused and not for the right reasons. If they're used properly, well then of course it's a good document. Illegally or without consent, using that person's property, money, or other assets. It might be somebody might be moving in with an elderly person with good intentions, but they start using the car, they start getting access to the bank account, using the cabin, using anything that the older person might have, and not in cases without their knowledge. Now, the next one, I'm sure that many of you have heard before. Promising lifelong care, but not following through. Well, you know, how many times does that happen when a family member says, I'm going to move in with grandfather, grandmother, or an aunt or an uncle. I'll take care of you right until, you know, you don't need that care anymore. But after a few years, they realize, oh my dear, this is too much for me. I can't handle it anymore. And I've seen examples of this many, many times where, guess what? The older person gets pushed off to a retirement home. And so that promising of that lifelong care didn't really happen. And there are many, many examples of that. Befriending an older person for personal gains. How many times have you heard tell of that? Many, many times. You know, somebody will move in on an older person simply because they have no family, and this is an opportunity for me to get in there and be nice to them or whatever. But it's not for the right reasons. It's for so they can get access to the house, to the monies, and I have many examples of that where this has happened. Scams, well, you've all heard of that too. Romance, CRA, Canada Post, identity theft, banking information requests, fake contests, you know, lonely older man, you know, needs companionship. Well, all of a sudden there's somebody a female starts to get interested, and it could be the other way around too as well. Don't have to be not picking on the female side of it, but it happens more often on the male side. And you know, and next thing they got access to all of the funds. They start selling stuff. Request for banking information. Here's another story that happened very recently. An elderly man receives a telephone call in the morning and said, good morning, I'll call him Mr. Smith. Good morning, Mr. Smith. This is such and such a bank. I won't name the bank. Calling, and we notice you haven't used your bank account in a while, and that happens for a lot of older people. They're not really active. Their bank accounts don't become really active all the time. And we're just calling to find out whether you know, we need to verify some information. And the man said, okay, what do you need to know? Well, do you have your bank book nearby? Oh yes. All right, we want to compare records here. So what's recording in your bank account? He gets out the bank account and he says, well, it's $38,900 some odd dollars in the bank account. Oh, very good. Well, that matches up with our records here, and just want to make sure what your date of birth was, if that matches up with the records that the bank has. And he said, well, oh yes, I was born in 1929. I'm using fictitious dates here, but just to give you an idea. Oh, that's great. That even matches up. One other question: what date were you married? And he gives what year? Yeah, okay. He gave the year of marriage. Well, that's fine. Thank you very much. This matches up very, very well. until a few days later, the real bank calls locally and said, Mr. Smith, there's some activity in your account that we think is suspicious. When they asked for the date of his birth date or the date of his marriage, what were they fishing for? Generally speaking, that's what a lot of older people use for their PIN number. In the meantime, the bank had been able to block something like $9,800 worth of outgoing transfers. Amazing. But a lot of people use their birth date, their date of their marriage, or some other easy date. And that's what scammers are up to these days. They will fish around for information that will help them be able to get access to your bank account. Because today, a lot of bank accounts, just about all have to have a personal identification number, because they're using them at ABMs or online. Fake contests, another one that happens all the time. So many older people get caught with that one. Next slide. I'm sure that people that's joining in this morning have heard tell of this one here. Family members bleeding older adults of their financial resources. Family members moving back in with their parents for longer periods. Some of the family members have moved away, and then of course they've fallen on hard times, and what do? They move back in the house with mom and dad, this time maybe with 3 or 4 children. And they can't make ends meet. So who do they rely on? The mother, the father, the grandfather, the grandmother. It is one of the major issues that older people face today. They feel obligated to support their family members. Family members asking for loans. Well, I need $5,000 and I'll pay you back. Well, I've seen plenty of experiences where this never ever happens. Parents or grandparents asked to co-sign on loans, give down payments on large ticket items. Might be like a house, it might be like an ATV. Here's the other one. I've seen a lot of it, and it still exists today. I've been retired now for a few years, but I keep in contact with my colleagues at the bank, at all of the banks, as a matter of fact, not only branches, but other banks. I retired from Scotiabank, but I have connections and relationships with people at other banks. And they tell me this one here is the one that's really still ongoing. Older children getting into financial trouble and then coming to the parents or the grandparents to bail them out, to make the mortgage payments, to make the ATV payments. Some of these people have moved off to Alberta, places like that. Well, then with the slowdown, guess what? They're back in their communities, and they got this all these big ticket items to pay for. They can't pay for it. Where do they go for money? They go back to their parents. I know I talked to one personal banking officer 3-4 months ago, and she said a lot of people that moved away to Alberta, they got jobs, $200,000 a year, big money. They were probably into the trades, they didn't have any skills into managing that kind of money, and they spent it just as easily as they made it. And the one thing that they point back to is the education system. They said, one person told that personal banking officer, I wish to hell that I was taught in school how to manage my money. I wouldn't be in the mess I'm in today and having to go to my parents to bail me out. So these are some of the things that I do now in my volunteer capacity. When I go into high schools, is talk about financial literacy, because it's dearly needed to help younger people understand about financial management, managing your money after you get a job. Next slide. Here's another example, or a number of examples. Adult children, one or more, persuading their parents to sell the family home, move into a retirement home, come live with us. But you know what? Not all of them are for the right reasons. And sometimes, yes, it's adult children really have their parents' best interests at heart, and really have been able to see the bigger picture where the family home is too big and it really should be sold. But I can tell you, I know of many cases where family members have been persuading their parents to sell the family home, go out into a home, you don't need it anymore. Guess what? They want to get access to the money. They want their share, Family members arranging to have the seniors' money or investments transferred into their name under the guise of protection, the ease of access or hiding it from the government. You've got $50,000 in your bank account. You should move that over to my name. You're getting older. Your mind might go. You need to. I can manage this for you. And in lots of cases, it's for the right reasons. But I've seen many occasions over the years where it's not been for the right reasons, and they really just want to get access to the money so they can start using it. I've had many cases where there's been an explosion in my office at the bank where family members, just one example, this goes back, before I retired, 3 daughters came home to bury their mother, to attend her mother's funeral. They ended up in my office to pay, along with the 2 brothers, to pay the funeral expenses. When I went to check their bank account, there was no money left in the bank account, none. Well, you should see the racket that started then. It happened that one of the brothers' wives got access to the money and spent it. No money to pay her mom to pay the funeral bill. And adult children finding a way to take full control of the parents' finances and withholding access to financial information from the other siblings. This happens all the time. One adult child seems to find his or her way into the parents' control, and get hold of all of the finances, and really not giving any more access to the financial information from to the other siblings. It's it might be a case of also removing or selling the seniors' personal items. I've seen this happen as well. Selling the furniture, selling the boat, selling the ATV. Sometimes without the seniors' permission. Selling it on the basis, well, you don't need this anymore now. You're old now. You're not going to need it. So why don't we sell it? And guess where the money goes? Next slide. Why does this happen in late life? Well, there's no simple explanation. Studies have found that abuse is hidden, unreported, due to a feeling of embarrassment, the fear of the consequences for their own well-being, if dependent on the abuser, or it might be for the protection of the family member. Just think about it, that if Johnny took the money from the parents and it gets reported, well, Johnny might have to go to jail. I can't allow that to happen. We'll be, so embarrassed over it, And it might be that if it's one family member taking care of the elderly parents or the grandparents, or, the fear of the consequences, they might have to take some further abuse if they reported it. And the other statistic, particularly here in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, people who grew up in the 1930s and the 40s in smaller communities were generally raised to be trusting of others. They wouldn't think that their own family members would bring any harm to them. They wouldn't think that the next door neighbor or even the other people in the community, including clergy, and there's been some examples of that, where the clergy have taken advantage of older people financially, at the financial abuse part. And also, there's a lot of people that just don't have the sophistication on financial matters. They were grew up in the early, in the 30s, the 40s. They weren't formally educated, so they really didn't know very much about financial matters, particularly in today's age where you have internet banking and in a lot of cases of the banks that were in, smaller communities, they've moved away, and now they have to deal with financial matters, through the ABM or online. And there's the last one there. It's what I call the crime of opportunity based on need, greed, or the feeling of entitlement. Need, well, guess what? Grandfather got $50,000 in the bank and I need money simply because, our daughter's going off to university. We don't know where we're going to get the money, but he's old. He won't never need it. So, and he won't even know that I took $10,000 out. So I need it. Or there's a period of unemployment in the family where they need money to live. The other one, greed. Well, you're old. You don't need it. I need it more than you need it. I should have this. And then there's the other part of entitlement. While I'm looking after you, I'm taking care of you. I'm driving you to your medical appointments. I'm doing all the things that you need. So I feel that I'm entitled to it. And my sister got the house, so I should get the money. That kind of a mindset. The next slide. And these are this PowerPoint presentation that you're all seeing here is a generic copy that I really take to a lot of seniors' homes, to seniors' organizations, community groups, and even to the high schools when I do high school presentations. And it talks about really the signs of possible abuse, the red flags, as I call it. And it might not only apply to the financial aspect, but it might apply to all of the other forms, like the physical side. The senior, you go into visit Aunt Mary, and you find that she does not seem or behave like his or herself. Seems to be depressed. Not many conversations like it used to be one time, that if you go in to see Uncle Jake and Aunt Mary, that they'd be all they're very talkative, they'd be very full of life, and but they don't seem like that anymore. They seem to be short on conversations, depressed. There might be something that's going on there that you don't know about. Visitors and only family members restricted. One time that there was an opportunity to go to visit an older person, but now there's a new home care worker. There might be a new family member that's moved in to take care of the senior, and they don't really want anybody else coming into the house. Well, Aunt Mary's not feeling this well this morning, or they're not up to visitors or whatever. That might very well be a sign that something is not really right. Seniors showing fear in the presence of the abuser. It might be that you might notice that the person is just fearful because the person, be it the adult son or the daughter-in-law, or whoever that might be, whenever they start talking about financial matters, they're fearful. That might be a sign that something is not right. The senior has no knowledge of finances, absolutely no knowledge at all, don't know anything. That might be a red flag. The abuser is evasive about financial arrangements. I heard one case recently where a sister started asking another sister who was taking care of their parents, what about mom's money? Can I have a look and see? No, you don't need to know that. That could very well tell that person that something is not right about this. They tend to hide the truth when questions are asked. Like they might very well say, "Oh, everything's just fine. You don't need to know anything more than that." Next slide. Here's another one that I'm sure that many people have seen over the years. Family members only visiting on pension day. At the end of the month, when the pension checks comes out, that's when lots of times you'll see the family members showing up to visit the grandparents, particularly some students, a number of students that really just want to take advantage there, try to get some money from their grandparents. Financial documents and bills coming to another address. Yeah, you might wonder why. Why is the bank statement coming to the caretaker or a daughter or son's own mailing address? Might be for the right reason, but it might be very well a sign that, they don't want anybody to know about what's happening. Bills are not being paid, or they're being paid late, like the hydro bill. You find out that there's a notice comes that the hydro power is going to be cut off because the bill wasn't paid. Unusual banking activities, ATM withdrawals, e-transfers. E-transfers is one that really gets a lot of attention these days. Let me share another story with you. An elderly man, and this one happened within the last year. He was in his mid-70s, living alone, really not sophisticated in financial matters. He had his monthly bills coming out, his telephone bills, he had to deal with his telephone bill, his hydro bill, and all the usual household operational costs. And a relative said to him, "You don't have to worry about that. Let me take care of this. I'll look after all these things." He went, "Oh, that's great. I don't have to worry about that anymore." And then one day he decided he went to the bank to get some money, and he realized, my God, I don't have as much money as I thought I should have. It was a case that I was involved in personally, because I had driven this man to the bank as part of my volunteer roles, one of my many other volunteer roles. And then he called me. He said, "I don't think I have. There's something going on with my bank account." Well, I said, let's go right inside to see a banking officer. When we come to find out, that family member had set up an email account in the person's name and was using e-transfers. Yes, the person was paying the bills, but the morning that this person had checked to see what his bank balance was like, there was $260 got withdrawn from his bank account that very morning. And that's what triggered an inquiry. When we start looking at it, it was $2,800 that had been withdrawn within the period of 1 year by way of e-transfers. So what do we do then? Of course, we fixed it right there and then by having a new bank account opened up, a new PIN number for him, for the elderly person, and arrangements made with Newfoundland Light and Power, with his Bell services for his TV, all of it to come out automatically. So he doesn't have to worry about that anymore. But here's an example where somebody, a family member, with the intentions of helping out that person, really was helping herself at the end of the day. Seniors being asked to send money to charities and other unknown places. Another story, an elderly man. His daughter came home to visit him from Ontario, and he said to her, I'll call her Mary, "Mary, I'm going to have to change banks." And she said, "Why?" "Well," she said, "they're charging me too much for money orders." Well, she said, "Dad, what do you need money orders for?" "Well," he said, I'm sending money," he said, "to a religious order down in the United States." When she come to check his bank account, he was sending 3 and 4 money orders to a religious order down into the United States. He could ill afford to do this. So here's another example of where charities, if you will, and this is a religious order. You know, he was asked to send money to them by way of money orders. Now, my own personal opinion on that, and this was going on for just about a year, that somebody at the bank should have picked up on that and said, Mr. Smith, you know, you're in your 80s, not that that's old or anything, but I mean, you know, he was an elderly person living alone. You know, you're buying a lot of money orders. Good Lord, is there something that we should know about here, you know? But it didn't happen. But thankfully, the daughter picked up on that, you know. Senior not understanding the financial decisions that somebody else is making for them happens all the time. Don't worry about it. I've got all that taken care of. You don't have to worry about it. The next slide. We're getting down to the closer to the end. Some key messages. Most financial crimes and harms against the elderly are committed by family and members and people the victim knows and trusts. I think we've already pointed that out. Social isolation and loneliness put seniors at increase for elder abuse. You know, if you're socially isolated, could be in a small community, but also now with COVID, you could be isolated anyhow. If you're in a bigger community, you're lonely, you know, you need people to talk to, and sometimes, you know, the wrong people, you know, puts themselves ahead of the needs and interests of that older person. Seniors with physical or mental impairments, the recent loss of a partner, they're certainly at much higher risk of being abused. And technology has allowed a growing number of pathways to exploit seniors. A lot of seniors, you know, are forced to use technology for dealing with their financial needs in terms of like ABMs, computers, and wherever and whatever that they really don't have a full understanding, and it's certainly an opportunity for scammers and others who would want to bring harm to older people to exploit them. And I can tell you something: financial abuse can happen to anybody. You know, I'm surprised sometimes when I get involved with certain situations that this has happened to what I thought was, you know, pretty much an educated person, but nevertheless somehow they let their guard down, you know, and they got caught in a financial scam or something. Okay, next slide. Caregivers role. Now, I really want to stay up front. I know there were some caregivers that were going to join us this morning, and I've given some presentations to caregiver services for their employees. And I got to say right up front, while there's been some caregivers that has played a devastating role in the lives of many seniors, they, for the most part, play a very important role in the lives of seniors. They provide all the home support with meals and cleaning, certainly companionship, safety, and much more. I mean, they can be the eyes and ears of anybody that really wants to take advantage of that older person. So I really want to say that they do great work. But seniors need to have confidence and trust in the caregiver. Their honesty, you know, and kindness is certainly a very valuable attribute. But also, caregivers need the caregivers, while they can provide protection to the older person, they also need to protect themselves against the potential allegations of theft. I mean, I say this for the various presentations that I've given. You know, if a senior's got the habit of leaving their wallet around on the table somewhere, they need to say to Mrs. Smith, please put away your wallet, because you know, I don't want to be some family member to say, well, you know, there's money missing, or if they got to go out and buy groceries for them. If the senior gives them $100 to buy groceries, when they bring it back, if they spend $65, then the $35 they should pass it back to them, have a receipt, and when the daughter comes that evening to show I bought $65, here's the receipt. And so that's a way of protecting them. But I'll just share another story with you. that happened sometime within the last year. A senior reached out to me to talk about this. They had a caregiver that was providing services to the senior. She was living alone. It was the caregiver was not through a caregiver or a home support company like Compassion or Total Care. There was somebody just hired right off the street. And one day, the senior's wallet went missing. Couldn't find it anywhere. The senior was pretty, astute. They really knew what what kind of money she had in there, and she had a habit of putting the $20 bills on one side of the wallet and the tens and the fives and whatever, pretty much organized in the wallet. And guess what? After all the uproar, nobody seen the wallet and couldn't figure out where the wallet went. The wallet showed up in the senior's sock drawer with the money all arranged. She didn't really know how much she had in there, but the 20s were mixed in with the 10s and the 5s, and an indication that something was not right there. But as I said earlier, I think caregivers really need to protect themselves as well, because sometimes they get accused of stuff that they don't deserve. Okay, I think next slide. What's the cost of financial abuse? Well, it certainly is the loss of the financial resources for the individual, for the senior. If it's gone, sometimes it can't be recovered. But also equally important is the loss of confidence and trust in people. I mean, older people, when this happens to them, they become devastated to think that this could ever happen to me, and my God, I can't trust people anymore. It also has a negative impact on the senior's health. I mean, they start to worry about it. They start to, it really impacts them in a major way. And then it becomes the embarrassment and the shame. How could I ever let this happen to me? I can't tell anybody about it. I'm so embarrassed over it, And then what's the other cost? Conflicts within the family. And I think we've all seen issues and cases where families gets torn apart over the conflicts that arise because one family member gets more of the senior's resources, particularly at the time of death. And sometimes these conflicts never ever get resolved, and they're carried right to the grave. I know of one recent case where the mother's not talking to the daughter, and the daughter's not talking to the sister, and it's just a real mess. But also it's the increased cost to the family and the government. If the senior is really, her health starts to decline, his or her health, then they end up in the hospital. That's a cost to the government. It's a cost to all of us. It's a cost to the taxpayers, and it's a cost to the family, because maybe it was the burial money, as I explained to you in that earlier incident. Burial money that was gone, and now the family all got to pitch in to help bury grandmother or the father or the mother. Next slide. So how do we reduce all forms of elder abuse, including financial? I really say it's all about education, awareness, just getting that message out. Family members are encouraged to be involved and not trust blindly to any one sibling to be in total charge of the parent's well-being. How often do you see that? You've got 5 or 6 siblings, and it's the one child or one that's really is doing all of the work and is totally involved. Might be for the wrong reasons, might be for the right reasons, but I really think that family members all have to be involved in the caretaking of a parent's well-being. Family members are encouraged to pay attention to paid and unpaid caretakers activities. I have a personal story. I won't go into this now, other than to say that there was somebody taking care of my mother in her elderly years. And after she had passed on, when the family went in to collect the resources, there was nothing left in the house. It's all stolen by a caretaker. This happened a number of years ago, but it might have been fixed if some of the other family members, I was not living home at the time, could have paid a little more attention to it. Seniors should keep abreast of frauds and scams and be aware of the risks of releasing personal information to others. I think seniors really got to keep up to date themselves to be aware of the risk that's happening out there, and all the calls, being taught is to, you get a call, you don't recognize the number, don't answer any questions, just don't get involved. Financial protection arrangements being put in place early, and by that I mean having a will done, having a power of attorney. As people age, they really need to get their affairs in order early on, and really not wait until maybe something happens with your mind that you can't do it. Like a power of attorney, a healthcare directive, as a matter of fact, choosing an executor, somebody, not just anybody, but somebody that knows what they'll be doing, somebody that's experienced, somebody that has the expertise to carry out the wishes of a will. And many seniors just don't want to make a will because I'll wait till later, but it should be done early on. Next slide. Seniors are encouraged to seek guidance and advice on financial matters from their banker and other professionals. Sometimes, a lot of older people listen to the next door neighbor, or listen to somebody talk that really don't know what they're talking about. They really should get the proper advice, in terms of financial matters, particularly in the latter stages of their life. Talk to their banker. They could, they have their best interests at heart, be it at a bank, a trust company, or a credit union. Really get the right advice. Seniors must be encouraged to report suspected abuse to the authorities. If the senior thinks that they're being abused, pick up the telephone, call the police, call a healthcare authority. The community is encouraged not to pay a blind eye to any suspected abuse. Certainly be an observer. And so many times that you hear people talk, I've heard it myself. I think there's something going on in that house, but I don't want to get involved. I don't know. Well, why should you? It's as a society, you need to be an observer. You need to understand that there's somebody that might need your help. You're not being too inquisitive. You need to know that things are all right with your neighbor or the person down the street. Seniors organizations like the 50+ federations, 50+ clubs around our province, and I know they're doing great work in bringing in speakers. They can play a major role in getting the message out on elder abuse. SeniorsNL, a great organization. They do such valuable work in getting the message out. All kinds of things can be done to get really to get the message out on elder abuse, all of the forms. And I can tell you the last one there, our education system can play a role, because as some of you may know, I do a lot of presentations to high schools around the province, and I get such valuable feedback, that, a parent, I know over in Corner Brook said, Johnny, I think that was the person's name, came home and he said, we had somebody in today to talk about elder abuse and the financial abuse, and they start telling their parents about it. So just that's another message, it also helps, really in the messaging of getting the word out. Next slide. Seniors' financial literacy. That's another point that needs to be brought out. Education and awareness sessions. That's what I referred to earlier. Seniors need to know a lot about things that's happening in our society today. Financial affairs to be put in place early on, as I said. Get that will done. Get that healthcare directive done. Get your affairs put in order. Don't wait till it's too late. Bank cards kept on the person, not to be given out to others for shopping. A lot of people keep the bank cards left around in a bureau drawer somewhere, the credit card, the debit cards. In some cases, I've known of where the PIN number written on the back of the card because people can't remember. PIN numbers should not be easily identified. Don't use your date of birth. Don't use anything that your last 4 digits of your phone number. Mix them up somewhat. Maybe your grandfather's date of birth or the date of birth, something that nobody can really identify them. Change them often. Use credit cards only at recognized sites, not some of these sites that you see online. You don't know really if they're legitimate or not. Next slide. Record financial information and keep records and valuables in a safe place. Do not keep large amounts of money at home or at a retirement home. Sometimes people, older people, they don't like dealing with credit cards or debit cards. They like to have the real cash at hand, and they keep it in a bureau drawer somewhere or at home. Do not use ABMs alone at night. There's always somebody there that could possibly come in to rob you. Share financial information with trusted family members, but just not one adult child. Sometimes older people, they got, Jenny is the favorite one in the family, so she knows everything that mom and dad's about their financial affairs. That should not be the case, because that's an invitation for potential abuse. Once the senior, when I talk about seniors' financial literacy, if they get educated on all these topics like I just talked about, recording information and keeping records and valuables in a safe place, that will all help safeguard against elder financial abuse. Next slide. Review your banking transactions regularly. Just don't look at it once a year. Keep checking on it on a monthly basis. Seek clarification for any unknown entries. Set up direct payments from your bank account for regular monthly bills. That's really a great way. It saves a lot of seniors a lot of time and anxiety. If you have your hydro bill or your phone bill or your cable bill coming directly out of your bank account. It's a safe and effective way to deal with financial management. And if you've got a home care worker in your home as an older person, maybe you should consider establishing a separate bank account for your monthly operating expenses. Maybe moving up just a smaller bit of money where the senior, the home care worker can have access to that bank account, to buy some groceries or to buy some personal items, so that they don't have access to your larger amounts of your bigger bank account, I'll call it. That's just another little angle to help safeguard a senior. And certainly caution with online banking and e-transfers. And this could be an opportunity. If you're not familiar with what you're doing, it could be a disaster. Next slide. I'm getting down to the end. Reporting suspected cases. Report. The provincial law requires mandatory reporting of suspected cases of suspected abuse of adults who lack the capacity to understand and appreciate the abuse. I'm understanding that the fines, if you don't report it and if you got convicted, that is $10,000 and up to 1 year in jail. So it's a pretty serious offense that about some abuse that's happening and just pays a blind eye to it. Don't report it. It might be nothing, and it can be done anonymously. They can check it out. The number is there on the screen. Call the police, call the healthcare authority, call somebody in authority and say, I think something is not right. I'm seeing something that just don't look right. And if it's nothing, if it gets checked out, well, that's fine. You've done your part. But it could be really the start of something that helps a senior. If the person does understand that they're being abused, they can contact the police. Next slide. Working together in society to combat elder abuse. We all have a duty to speak out against the exploiters of the most vulnerable in our society. These are older people, they're the people that's committed their lives. They were here before many of us. They built our foundation, they built our roads, our highways, they were the fisher folks, they were the farmers, they were the carpenters, they were the homemakers. And now in their latter stages of life, they are probably in a vulnerable position. So we all have a duty to protect them. So don't sit on the sidelines. Don't become an enabler. Don't allow the abuser to succeed. And certainly we can all be agents of change. We also have a vested interest, since someday in the future, every single one of you on this call this morning, or a family member of either one of you, could be a target and a victim. And next slide. I think that's just a picture of me and a few students. I don't know where it is, out in might have been Grand Falls or Gander, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's I had a few T-shirts that I gave out, stand up against elder abuse, and it was kind of like a few questions to engage the students in the classroom. And I must say that was a little bit of a fun exercise where we got the kids involved in talking about elder abuse and understanding the aging process. So it's all a part of their studies on human dynamics, and a little story about sometimes how every single one of us can make a difference in the lives of others. And I think it was in Grand Falls, I was doing a presentation at Exploits Valley High. When at the end of the presentation, a young lady at the back of the class stood up and said, "Thank you, Mr. Bonnell, for coming to our school today and giving us a better understanding of elder abuse and the aging process. You just helped me made up my mind what I want to do. When I finish high school, when I finish university, I want to be a social worker to help deal with some of the issues that you pointed out this morning." I felt pretty good about that I was making a difference in the life of a young person, to set them on a career path. Thank you very much for that opportunity here this morning to just talk a bit more about elder abuse. I don't know, Mary, what we're doing with time-wise for questions. I have to leave at 11:30. I don't know what the timeline is now.
Leo, thank you for that. It was so much information.
Yeah.
I think everybody learned a lot today. I certainly hope so. Right now, we have a number of questions that come in. I think there's a lot going on in the chat box. I do have a question here that someone sent in. She says, "My husband and I do not have children, and our close family members are around the same age as we are. Right now, we can look after our money affairs, but we know that should we live long enough, this might change and we will have to rely on a third party, perhaps total strangers, to handle our affairs. What mechanisms or support services are in place so that you can be assured your guardian trustee is not going to take advantage of or abuse your situation when you cannot speak up for yourself?"
Okay, many older people in that particular set of circumstances, they use what's called a corporate trust. That's offered by all of the banks and the trust companies, and that's a corporate executor. In other words, you engage them, they will then manage your affairs right up until the end. Pay for your care. It's a legal process, and I'm certainly aware. I know during my working career, we signed up a lot of people in this particular set of circumstances where they didn't have any family, nobody that they really wanted to trust, even even when they did have family, that they might be ripped off somewhere. So they said, we will go to a trust company. I know with the bank that I work with, it was Scotia Trust. and they took on that role of administering the estate of that particular person.
Thanks, Leo. Lee, I think you have some questions there as well. Do you want to?
Yeah, I have a couple comments, but first I think we'll go to Yamuna, for which she has her hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, thank you. It's just I have one funny thing to say. While Mr. Leo Bonnell was going on, with his nice information, there was a call here who said, my security system calling me saying there's some unusual activity going on in my bank account. I thought that was so funny. That's so funny.
Yeah.
So, another one is, the home care people in Ontario, that big 2 or 3 companies there that were looking after the elderly, and about 90% of people died in that area due to COVID. I didn't hear anything about what happened after that. Any consequences? Anything happened to them? They were charged or nothing? Just another, that's a question from me. That's all I wanted to know, because I haven't heard anything on that.
I really haven't heard any outcome at all as to what happened there. Another point that I want to make, that I've been a very an advocate for really having a separate statute within the criminal code that deals with elder abuse, be it the financial, be it the personal, whatever, because I really think it's so serious. It's such a major problem right across our country, and to have these crimes just lumped in with all other crimes really don't give it the prominence that it really needs to have. And I really believe that there should be a separate statute within the criminal code to really advance this and give it the exposure that it needs to have.
Thank you.
Carolyn, I wonder, would you like to unmute yourself?
Lee, you have more questions there that came in earlier?
Yeah, and I also know that Carolyn has a question, but Carolyn, if you're having trouble unmuting yourself, feel free to type in the bar and I'll be happy to read it out. We had somebody send in a comment who works in the geriatric assessment unit, and they see a lot of people who have lost their ability to manage their own finances and are often taken advantage of by family members who are also their caregivers. So when you don't have capacity and you're relying on people, the vulnerability is certainly evident there. Leo, I don't know if that's something that you've seen before as well.
Absolutely, and that's why I've always been saying that really you need to get your affairs put in order really early on, really, so that you have somebody either within the family, 1 or 2 members, that's really going to manage these affairs, because in some cases there's lots of abuse that comes out of these kinds of circumstances.
Okay, and I also have Carolyn, if you would like to ask your question, but I know that early on you asked if there were, sorry, trying to find, it was way up early, were there any tips? How do you help someone who you suspect may be experiencing financial abuse? So that's a general question, but I don't know if you had any other tips, Leo.
What was the question again? You were broken up.
Sure. How do you help someone who you suspect may be experiencing financial abuse? What are some of the supports you can offer?
You really need to, and I've had some cases where this has come up, and I've really arranged to have a social worker go in to visit. I went through the proper channels, but really what was the end result is that they had a social worker go into the home of that particular person to investigate to see whether the concerns or the suspicions were real. And in most cases, it turned out that the suspicions were real. And, yeah.
I'd like to add to that too. I think you should always have respect for the person who works up the courage to confide in you that they're probably being financially abused, okay?
Yes.
And, just have the utmost respect for them and don't blame the victim. You know, well, how could you be so foolish to do that? You
Yes,
know, you need to be careful and tread gently, I guess.
yes.
Yeah.
See, in lots of cases too, is that I know there are cases where seniors really don't want to come forth to talk about that for the fear of the consequences, you know, that might follow as a result of but like Mary said, you know, there are some people that really gets up to courage and says, I've had enough of this. I really got to get it dealt with, you know.
We have another comment about capacity. Tracy comments that the process involved in becoming someone's guardian after they have lost capacity is expensive. And there is a lot involved with reporting back to the court. So there's no doubt that there are some systemic barriers to looking into capacity. But again, if you, I think probably Leo, I'll just throw out a comment that any support that people can have, or call SeniorsNL, or call, you know, discuss it with your doctor or other trusted professionals, maybe can help through that process.
Yes, absolutely. No doubt SeniorsNL can really be a great resource there to help out. And I acknowledge the fact that it is a very complex and long drawn out process. And that's why really, if you have all of this put in order early on, it just eliminates these problems later on in life.
One other comment, Mary, that we had received was another risk factor. Someone had had some bad experiences with renters. And while this can happen at any age, the person was a senior and felt they had been taken advantage of. And the person was also a female. So if a senior is renting out an apartment or a room or whatever, to be careful of, I guess, who you're taking in, and to safeguard your things and your bank accounts.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And really, you know, having people around you, close associates that really can help out, you know, SeniorsNL, your 50+ clubs, you know, your clergy. There's so many, there's lots of resources out there. People were ready to go for it, go looking for them.
Yeah, and related to that was making sure that the rent is paid. And that comes back to family living with you as well, doesn't it, Leo? Where
Absolutely.
Family are not contributing to the financial coffers there if they're living. Noreen also has a comment. She has an issue with many of those charitable organizations who are very pushy when they call up seniors looking for donations. It almost makes seniors feel guilty. That's very true. Certainly veterans, RCMP, domestic violence. I know, you know, certainly some of the children's services as well can be really pull at your heartstrings.
Absolutely, indeed. You know, when an older person gets a call, particularly a grandmother, you know, from a charity that says, you know, you gave us, you know, some money last year for the Children's Aid of Africa, just pulls some name out of the air. And the senior might respond by saying, you know, I don't think I could do it this year. You know, I have additional expenses. My healthcare costs or my drugs are gone up. I'm sorry, I can't do it. And then, of course, the guilt starts to get laid on. Well, that's too bad, Mrs. Smith, you know, because, you know, some poor child is going to die. And as a result of you not being able to, you know, then, oh, well, I suppose I can give you $20, you know. So that's, as Noreen says, this is the guilt part of it that kicks in, sort of thing. And tugs at the heartstrings of an older person who thinks about their own grandchildren. And, you know, yeah, it is real. It is reality.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments?
Mary, just one last comment. Brittany earlier on had typed in the chat bar, and she reminds us all that when we're speaking about people who have an addiction, that we put the person first. So it's, and because certainly substance use can be a financial risk factor, but we always put the person first when we're discussing.
Yes,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, my email address is on there on the presentation. If anybody wants to reach out after the call and send me something, you know, I certainly can help try to respond to it and maybe direct that person in the right area. It is elder abuse, all the 9 forms is something that I'm very passionate about. I really think that we really need to address this in a meaningful way, and every single one of us can help, you know, deal with this every single day.
That's great. Leo, again, my thanks. That was fabulous.
It's been my
Slide-
pleasure.
Is there a slide up there, everybody?
Yes, there says need a certificate.
Okay. Yes, if anyone needs a certificate for work-related professional development or post-secondary education, just let me know and we will send them out.
Okay.
And the next session we're having is next Tuesday morning. Let's talk about elder abuse again. And as I said, next Tuesday is June 15th, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And Kelly Heiss, Executive Director of SeniorsNL, and I will be on, and we will be talking about different forms of elder abuse and more how neighbors, friends, and family can help, okay? And coming up after that, we're going to have a couple of pharmacists here talking about blood pressure and cholesterol medication, which was requested some time ago.
Excellent.
We've got lots of stuff in store.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off here now, folks. And,
Okay.
so you all have
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Leo.
Mary?
some other time. Take care,
Thank you.
everybody. Stay safe.
Mary? Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you, Leo. It's a wonderful presentation. Wonderful.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye now. I'm
And thanks to all of you for participating today.
Mary, I have to go to this federal provincial thing that's going on at 12 o'clock. Have to be there.
Sure.
The
Yeah,
senior-
we're finished now anyway.
Yeah. Oh, great. I have
Okay,
to-
everyone.
Mary,
Thank you so much.
Mary, sorry, somebody, I think it was Courtney Stoyles is looking for the email again. Leo's email, I do believe.
For the email for,
Oh,
Leo's email address.
That's for the certificate. And so it's Mary, it's your
Yeah.
email, isn't it?
oh,
Mary
your
E.
email. Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm just looking.
Okay,
Thanks for asking, everyone.
okay, bye, everyone. Thank you.